And tonight on the Daily Wrap, well, it's official. The 2-year-long investigation into the IRS targeting of conservative and Tea Party committees, it's over. We'll tell you what the verdict is in just a second. We'll also look back on yesterday's Benghazi hearing and what was not said. Meanwhile, the GOP heads are finally admitting that Donald Trump may indeed be the Republican nominee. And then there were 3. One Democratic candidate for president has dropped out of the race. We'll tell you who it was. You probably won't care. This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. Welcome to the show, everybody. Look who's here. You know him, you love him. He's the star of the Steve Malzberg Show. Steve Malzberg joining our panel.
Good to be here. Joe is off, so here I am.
Yeah, Joe is off today, but we're going to struggle to carry on without him, so we brought in the big guns. Also joining, she's America's pundit, she's Philadelphia attorney, she's Heather Hansen. And finally, he's a former FBI special agent, a former Navy SEAL, and formerly didn't have any hair. He's a current president of Continued Services. Jonathan Gillum joins us this Friday night. All right, if you're all ready, let's get right to the Daily Download.
Good afternoon, everybody. I just finished speaking with Secretary Liu and senior officials at the Treasury Department to discuss the investigation into IRS personnel who improperly screened conservative groups applying for tax-exempt status. I've reviewed the Treasury Department watchdog's report, and the misconduct that it uncovered is inexcusable. It's inexcusable, and Americans are right to be angry about it, and I am angry about it. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in any agency, but especially in the IRS.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Lois Lerner, and I'm the Director of Exempt Organizations at the Internal Revenue Service. I have not done anything wrong. I have not broken any laws. I have not violated any IRS rules or regulations, and I have not provided false information to this or any other congressional committee. And while I would very much like to answer the committee's questions today, I've been advised by my counsel to assert my constitutional right not to testify or answer questions related to the subject matter of this hearing.
That, of course, first was President Obama commenting on the investigation into the IRS, followed by former director of the IRS Exempt Organizations Unit, Lois Lerner, taking the fifth before the House Oversight Committee in 2013. As you'll no doubt recall, the committee was investigating whether the IRS was targeting conservative and Tea Party political action groups seeking exemption from taxes under the law. This was also making life a whole lot easier, we've come to see, for similar groups that were leaning a little bit more to the left. They weren't going through such a hard time with the IRS. Now, while Ms. Lerner was removed from her position, her status has been in limbo until today. Today, the Justice Department notified members of Congress that it is closing its 2-year investigation into the matter to determine whether any laws were broken during the investigations. The verdict? According to the DOJ, there will be no charges filed against Lois Lerner or anyone else in the Obama administration. Assistant Attorney General Peter Kadzik said in a letter to Congress that the FBI investigation into the matter found substantial evidence of mismanagement, poor judgment, and institutional inertia, leading to the belief by many tax-exempt applicants that the IRS targeted them based on their political viewpoints. But poor management is not a crime. We found no evidence that any IRS official acted based on political, discriminatory, corrupt, or other inappropriate motives that would support a criminal prosecution. I have a funny feeling that not everybody on this panel is going to agree with what the IRS had to say. And of course, We have to start with Steve.
Well,
Lois Lerner.
Well,
she's
just,
in the clear, man.
just as it was a travesty and a joke that she was permitted to say before taking the fifth at that hearing, I broke no laws, I did nothing wrong, I'm innocent, but I take the fifth. You're not allowed to do that. This whole thing is a sham. It's the most corrupt, I believe, Justice Department, politically speaking, we've ever seen. And this is just more evidence of it. And I think this bodes very poorly for those expecting anything to happen to Hillary Rodham Clinton. She's going to skate like Lois Lerner skated. And if this was a Republican in a different, or in any kind of true Justice Department, they'd be in big trouble.
Heather, let's pick up on something Steve pointed out, because we remember when this all happened, she did. She talked quite a bit before she took the fifth. As luck would have it, you're a lawyer. Did she, in fact, violate her opportunity to take the fifth or not?
I think she did.
I
think that once she got into the facts, she's proclaiming her innocence. I would have been killing me to not be able to cross-examine someone who stands there and says, I didn't do anything wrong, but you can't ask me any questions about it. And now are we supposed to be surprised that they weren't able to establish that there was some sort of a political motive? If you can't ask questions of the person who's responsible, then of course you can't establish a motive. If, in addition, certain computer files are missing, you have an even harder time to establish a motive.
But didn't those computer files magically reappear about a year ago?
They've gone missing and reappeared on more than one occasion, but I don't think they've ever been able to find the substance of some of the emails, again with the emails, that maybe would have given us some evidence here.
So, Jonathan, I remember when this was all going on. It's been a couple years now, and I can still remember a little bit back that far. Darrell Issa, who was at that moment running the House Oversight Committee, was very upset about this Fifth Amendment issue. And it appeared that he was going to challenge it, but I never heard another word about it. Why do you think he let it go?
I don't know. I don't know. But look, this
well,
is...
then what do we have you here for, Steve?
To point out the obvious, I think, that this is another example of hearings, by congressional hearings, that do nothing. There's no teeth in Congress. Last night was another example of this same thing. And I just tell you, she says she was the director of exempt organizations. I guess she was exempt of any charges of wrongdoing herself. I, in all my times of government service, have never heard ever of emails disappearing. I don't even know, I don't know anybody who doesn't know where their emails are.
It only happens in the most transparent administration in history. Keep that in mind.
Exactly.
But don't you think, though, I mean, the one thing that was sort of consistent with the Lois Lerner thing.
Argue back on this.
It's true. The Lois Lerner thing and with Hillary Clinton yesterday, you see no one can argue that there's mismanagement. I mean, they said it in the letter, right? There has been mismanagement. Right. And then when you looked at yesterday, there's some competency issues. Whether or not
You're
think
saying
that
in the hearing yesterday.
In the hearing yesterday
yes.
with Hillary Rodham Clinton. So I do think that when it comes to the general election, whoever is going to be against, presumably, Hillary Clinton, will have some strong points to make about the competency of this administration.
Well, no doubt. While Lois Lerner famously became the focal point of the congressional investigation, nobody was ever able to lay any responsibility for this effort at the doorstep of 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue, that, of course, being the White House. Is it possible in this day and age of partisanship and extreme politics for a Justice Department to successfully investigate the administration of which it's a part of? I got $10 that Steve's going to answer this no.
You lose. I think it's
just
possible.
Not for this
administration.
Right.
And I also believe that a special prosecutor was the logical step to take to quell any concerns about any partisanship or any fix being in. But of course, this administration had no interest in getting to the bottom of it.
Jonathan, it's a really scary night when I find myself agreeing too much with Steve Malsford.
But I want the $10 too.
All right, you get it. But he said something that I had said going back all these years, so I can't disagree with him. Why was there never a special prosecutor? It was a perfect example of why you have special prosecutors.
You keep asking me these questions that nobody knows the answers to. I mean, look.
We do.
Here's the interesting thing, though, about you and Steve agreeing is the fact that it doesn't really matter if you're liberal or conservative anymore in this day and age. There's liberal minds, conservative minds, and then there's criminal minds. And I just think what's going on in Washington is behavior that is just pure criminal, unethical, immoral.
Well, except that you've got to give some respect to the FBI and the Justice Department that says this may have been bad
But
behavior,
the FBI can
but it wasn't criminal.
The FBI can investigate whatever they want. The DOJ is the one that makes the decision whether or not they bring charges.
I have an idea for a TV show, Criminal Minds. Let's talk about that.
There you go.
Concept. You think it'll work? All
Very
right. This is a terrible segment. I've had to agree twice with Malzberg.
And he lost $10.
And I lost $10. Get off the show, Malzberg. We want you to share your thoughts on the end of this 2-year investigation into the IRS targeting scandal. You can do that by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let your voice be heard. Coming up after the break, we're going to look back at yesterday's Benghazi committee hearing. You don't want to miss it.
There were not even enough diplomatic security for him to leave the compound without asking the CIA operatives to assist them. Were you aware of that?
Well, we had an agreement with the CIA to help supplement security and to come to the aid. It was a mutual agreement.
Was that a written agreement?
No, it was not a written agreement, but we are posted with the CIA in many places in the country.
And welcome back to the show. While there were plenty of questions for Hillary Clinton during yesterday's Select Benghazi Committee hearing, 11 hours worth to be precise, what may prove to be equally as interesting is who was not being called to answer questions before the panel, either in public or in private. At this point, it is clear the annex located approximately 1 mile from the State Department consulate in Benghazi was not only a far larger operation, but was operating under the auspices of the CIA. Indeed, 2 of the Americans who lost their lives in Benghazi were killed at that CIA annex. So why has the CIA not been called to account by Congress for a failure to provide adequate protection at the annex? Why is David Petraeus, the director of the CIA at the time of the attack, not being asked to testify? Are there 2 deaths suffered at the CIA facility somehow less subject to scrutiny than the lives that were lost at the consulate? Steve, why is this all about the State Department and not about the CIA?
I don't know. You'd have to ask the committee and you'd have to ask the powers that be, but I don't want to lose, take it away from Hillary, who...
well, why not? I'm not saying take it away, no. but why aren't they equally as culpable?
Well, maybe, David Petraeus or whoever was responsible at the time didn't go over there and blame it on some nonsensical video and insult the family members as the coffins came home and said, we're going to get the guy who made the video.
But that doesn't speak to the real issue.
So I don't know, but the real issue is that Hillary Clinton yesterday admitted that she lied to the American public an hour before she told her own daughter it was specifically.
It was not what happened in Benghazi.
Call
it the cover-up after Benghazi.
Well, no, what happened
but that's
in Benghazi
not why
was
4 guys got killed.
But Hillary did not provide security to the request that was requested by Ambassador Stevens. But we're not talking about that right now. Why are we letting Hillary off the... Because the hearings were yesterday.
He just lost his $10. Heather, you take a shot at it.
I do think that there's an argument to be made that there's something there that maybe people know about and don't want to talk about. Exactly. Because you saw even with that questioning, there's a lack of follow-up. A good person follows up on the answer. What did the CIA know? What were they involved? It wasn't written, it was oral. I think that there's something there. I think Steve is right. When it comes to the cover-up, Hillary Clinton, really, that's where she got hit yesterday.
But wait, a CIA annex, I'm sorry, a CIA annex isn't known.
Of course it's known. We all know it was CIA.
No. At the time, you knew it was a compound where an ambassador was. Enhanced security could be evident and abundant, but you're not going to put security all over a building that you want to be incognito. I'm not saying that. Maybe that's one reason.
But weren't they there to help? I mean, I think that there's a lot of questions to be asked that aren't being asked, and
that's my point.
Well,
and maybe
let the
you're
former
right.
FBI.
That's what I was going to say. We got an FBI military guy here. What's up with that, man? Why is the CIA not being brought in on this?
Well, I think everybody's right here. I think Hillary has her part to play in this as far as blame goes. I think the head of CIA has their part to blame. I think that you're right, CIA compounds should not be known, but I think when you look at the weaponry that was used against that compound and the accuracy that it had, which was mortars, there had to be people that have gone in there and pasted off, which I'm pretty sure that they know that they did, which would tell you that somebody was not either screening the workers or they weren't weren't securing the compound properly. Overall, it was a complete failure of leadership before, during, and after
not
Benghazi.
Just State Department.
Not just State Department, but I do think that each one of them have their big parts to play, and the agency is typically more classified, so therefore they're slower to release any information about that.
Well, they haven't even been asked to. That's my point.
Well, we don't know exactly
yes,
what they have been and not been asked.
We would know. David Petraeus did testify in front of the House Intelligence Committee. We knew it. It was a private session,
Sure.
but we knew it. He has not been called. Meantime, there have long been stories that have circulated, most notably in an expose published by noted journalist Seymour Hersh, that what was really happening in Benghazi was a covert CIA operation involving the taking of guns from the Libyan government arsenal and moving them to the Syrian rebels attempting to oust Syrian dictator Bashar al-Assad. It's further been alleged that this was done in conjunction with the British MI6 and the Turkish government. If this is true, why is Congress attempting to shift all the blame onto the State Department? Heather, it's not just Seymour Hersh. There have been numerous accounts at this point. I don't think there's anybody anymore who doesn't believe that this covert operation was going on. So if there was such a covert operation, it's a darn good bet that the top guys in the Congress, John Boehner, people like that, knew it every step of the way. Isn't that why they're protecting the CIA?
Well, I think that's part of it, although if that's true that they knew, I mean, I thought it was interesting in looking at the story today, Rand Paul is the person who first raised the issue, and you sort of forget he's running for president. But I think that, I mean, what the answer is, it's all political. You know, the reason that we're going after Hillary Clinton.
CIA operation?
National security,
but it's a failure to, but they're not pursuing the CIA
But
portion.
wait a minute, Hillary was asked
story.
about all these scenarios about last night about weapons going to this country, to that. They wanted yes or no answers. She said she knew nothing and had never heard anything about weapons going anywhere to anyone. So is it possible, if feasible, the CIA was doing this and Boehner knew, but Hillary didn't? So did she perjure herself?
I think she totally knew, but I know that
she perjured herself.
But she couldn't have, in the name of national security, answered such a question.
Well, she didn't say that. She said no. He said you might not be able to answer this. She said no. So she perjured herself?
Maybe she didn't know.
I also think CIA paperwork is probably easier tracked than Hillary's paperwork.
All right, well, we ran out of time, and I had so much more I wanted to talk about on this. But is the CIA getting a pass in Benghazi investigation? And if so, why? We want to know what you think. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments. Let us know. Coming up, has the GOP finally admitted that Trump's their man?
We will have so much winning if I get elected that you may get bored with winning.
Never get bored with winning. Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. Despite some slippage in the early primary state of Iowa, Donald Trump continues to lead the pack for his party's nomination to be president. So what else is new? What's new is that the Republican Party is finally beginning to acknowledge that it's well within the realm of possibility that Mr. Trump will indeed be its standard bearer come 2016. The verdict is the result of a panel of Republican strategists, operatives, and activists convened by the political magazine Politico. The opinion of that panel may have been best expressed by Ed Rollins, longtime Republican presidential political strategist and 2008 campaign chair for Mike Huckabee's run for the White House, who said, speaking to the National Review, Trump is a serious player for the nomination at this time. So are the days of thinking that Trump is just a bit of summer entertainment now permanently behind us, Jonathan?
I remember the first day we were on here, and I told you this campaign is going to go somewhere, and you're like, there's just no way.
You were telling the truth. That's
and
right.
The thing that is, I think that is so impressive about this is that Trump has rallied the troops, so to speak, but the executives or the GOP backers, the financial backers, are not happy about this. But the rest of the conservative, conservative Americans are. The majority of them are happy about it.
Not the majority, because we see in the polls he has by far a plurality of the votes, but not a majority.
You wait and see when these other guys drop out.
Heather, you're not buying it.
I don't think so. I think he's got everybody he's going to get. And in fact, we've seen a drop in Iowa, right? So
let's talk about that. We talked about this last night, and Noah Rothman was on, and he brought up something that everybody seems to be missing. I didn't hear anybody talking about it today. Club for Growth is running a few $1 million worth of negative ads against Trump in Iowa, and apparently it's having an effect. What does that tell us, Steve? Does that mean that he can be gotten by some negative advertising?
First of all, coming up at 7 o'clock, I have both.
Whose show's at 7?
At my show, I have both Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum, who are going to weigh in on all of this.
Both of whom won the Iowa primaries.
Yes, both won the Iowa primaries. And here's the deal. I mean, Stephen Moore thinks that Donald Trump's tax plan is terrific. He thinks a lot of them are, but Donald Trump specifically. So I don't know what the Club for Growth's problem is with it. Nonetheless, look, to now realize, Ed Rollins, who I've known for years, I love him, but whoever doesn't realize by this time that Donald Trump is not only serious, but so is Ben Carson, who, as Heather alluded to, overtook him in 2 polls in Iowa. Between the two of them, they represent the resentment towards what's going on in Washington because the Republicans refuse to take on Barack Obama, and they've been lied to, and they're sick of it, and that's why no one is going to beat Trump and or Carson.
Well, as it happens, there's one more piece of additional proof that suggests Trump may indeed go all the way. Watch this.
Now there's this Trump thing going on, I gather. He's doing okay in the polls for a while, but he's not going to be the nominee either. I will bet anyone on the stage, a nice dinner, that Donald Trump is not going to be the nominee.
Bill Kristol saying that Donald Trump won't be the nominee, and if there's one thing that history has taught us is that when Bill Kristol of the Weekly Standard makes a prediction, you pretty much want to assume that the complete opposite is what's going to happen.
I don't know about that. I like
oh, he's wrong all the time.
I don't know about
but
that.
What about our predictions at this table? Anyone want to take Kristol up on his bet? Will Donald Trump be the nominee, Jonathan?
I think he will be.
Heather?
I do not.
Steve?
I think he will be.
Okay, 2 out of 3 say he's going to be him. Will we be sitting then at this table in 60 days asking if we must now take Ben Carson very seriously as the potential nominee of his party, or are we there already? How about the Rubio-Fiorina or Fiorina-Rubio ticket that Kristol's predicting is going to be it, Steve?
I don't think that,
do you take Ben Carson seriously now as a real potential candidate?
I think he's been a real potential candidate. I think he's proved that by now. I don't think Carly Fiorina is the right one. She has done no media since the last debate. I don't think she's serious anymore, to be honest with you, as far as wanting it. I think there'll be a female on the ticket, quite possibly, but it's going to be someone who's currently serving in government.
Right. May not be her.
Yeah.
I think that's actually a fair assessment, Heather.
You know, I'm not so sure about that. I think she's always wanted the VP spot, and I think that she still wants the VP spot, and I think that a Rubio-Fiorina ticket would do well. I do think Ben Carson is a very serious candidate. I think his boost in the polls.
Yesterday, Ben Carson came out with a statement saying that he wanted to preserve the Department of Education to monitor political speech on campus.
Yeah.
That doesn't trouble any of you?
It troubles me, but I know his point.
What if it was the Democrats monitoring political speech?
I'm sure. I haven't heard it, and I'm sure.
Well,
I want to hear the whole thing.
We actually played it.
I'm sure what he meant was, I'm sure it was in the context of monitoring the squelching of free political speech on campus.
Actually, I think he was talking about professors who lean way to the left.
Well, at the expense of conservatives being able to give their own opinions.
Well, you can't do that. Government can't be sticking their nose into what they say on college.
Well, this administration threatens colleges and universities that get public funding. Absolutely.
Well, then they shouldn't either, if they are.
Well,
it's just you can't do that. No, so I don't know about Ben Carson being serious, but do you think that everyone must now acknowledge that Donald Trump is most likely going to be the GOP nominee? Let us know. NewsmaxTV.com/comments. Coming up, and then there were 3. A Democrat candidate drops out of the race.
We will have so much winning if I get elected that you may get bored with winning.
Okay, I'm not sure why we're seeing that again, but there it is, just the same. Welcome back. We're winning. Welcome back to the Daily Wrap. While you may or may not be a supporter of Hillary Clinton's candidacy to become the nation's first female president, there's no denying that she has had a pretty good 10 days in her quest for the Democratic nomination. By most accounts, Clinton was the winner of the first Democratic debate. Then Joe Biden announced he would not stand between Hillary and the prize she seeks. And today, there are no shortage of Democrats proclaiming that Hillary sealed the deal by appearing cool, calm, collected, and most importantly, presidential, during yesterday's Benghazi hearings. Now, adding to Clinton's good times are the polls suggesting that she's gaining serious ground in some key early primary states. According to the Quinnipiac survey out yesterday, Clinton has made a significant leap in the state of Iowa. After trailing Senator Bernie Sanders by 1 point in last month's Iowa poll, she now, according to Quinnipiac, leads the Vermont senator by 11 points, with 51% to Sanders' 40%. Former Maryland Governor Martin O'Malley received the support of just 4%. So are we now officially moving into the coronation phase of Hillary's campaign, Heather Hansen?
I think so. I mean, she's had a great week. I thought that if you just looked at the tone, which most people did not watch all 11 hours. They probably didn't even watch one full hour. They watched bits and pieces on the news. The tone is what they see, and her tone was presidential. She did not it wasn't like the last time where she said, what does it matter anyway? Right. She didn't have a meltdown. She handled every question very well. Her answers made sense to the general public, and I think that it's going to be a big change.
Is it all over, Steve? Has she got it?
Well, if we had a fair media who's presenting, their slanted view, they showed her being presidential. When she was caught having lied to the American public about the video and telling her daughter and the Egyptian government and the Libyan government that it was not a video, it was terrorism, she sat there like this. I don't think the media is going to show that. That's not too presidential looking.
We all saw it watching the.
You and I, but as Heather pointed out, the American public didn't sit there. They worked. They didn't sit there for 11 hours.
Let's say, for the sake of discussion, that all that's correct.
Yeah.
Doesn't she still have the nomination?
Oh, does she have the nomination? She probably has the nomination. Who else? Lincoln Chafee. Who looks like
our next story. Looks like
big. Oh, it is? Okay.
It's big. It's a huge story.
Okay.
Jonathan, what do you think?
I really thought Lincoln Chafee was going to pull up through at the last night. No, but you know what? Not insulting because you're an attorney. I know you're an attorney as well. But you know, I used to be in proffers from the prosecution standpoint as an FBI agent, and what I saw last night was somebody that was very calm, cool, and collected at minimizing whatever crime they had ever been involved with. That's what I saw. Because a lot of these things just do not add up.
In other words, a politician.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, so let me get to this question. Heather, you can take the first crack at it. There's no question that the Clinton campaign got off to a really bad start. There's Emailgate. Beyond that, the scandal. There's maybe because of the scandal, there's been a general wariness on the part of many Democrats who've labeled Mrs. Clinton as dishonest, untrustworthy, and just plain unlikable. Heather, what has changed in these past 10 days?
When McCarthy said that this was a political investigation, it changed so that she's now the victim. And instead of being on the defense, she was able to go on the offense. And she's very comfortable on the offense. And I think the public perception of her, of the general public, is no longer this unlikable lady, but someone who is being victimized by the big bad Republicans.
It's a remarkable change, you have to admit, Steve. I mean, a couple weeks ago, she was,
It's all the way the media handles the story. The media called the IRS scandal over months and months and months ago. Nobody cared. If the media tells you there's nothing there, there's nothing there. If the media refuses to report on what came out of the hearings yesterday, which was that Hillary lied to the American public about the video, that media should be interviewing, they should be knocking on the doors of all the family members of those who were deceased in Benghazi, the three not Ambassador Stevens. Every one of the family members I've heard from those three, and I've spoken to two of them, despise Hillary Clinton, say she's a liar, you can't trust her. She lied to them when the coffins came home. That's devastating stuff. Media couldn't care less. If the media presented that, the mainstream media, she would be toast.
All right, let's pick up on that, Jonathan. Most people in this country, from polls that I see, don't like the media already. So why would the media have all of this impact on suddenly changing how we feel about Hillary Clinton?
Again, you're asking me a question that I just...
Jonathan, you did not come prepared.
The media is typically liberal, but here's where I think that we have to look at where I think a lot of blame is coming from, is that the Republicans are not pulling their weight when it comes to cross-examination. Last night, I did not see them do anything that would convince the liberal side that, hey, she's a little bit untrustworthy.
So we've run out of time, and I haven't gotten to the biggest news of the day.
Oh.
Lincoln Chafee has dropped out of the presidential race.
Well, there you go.
Raising that age-old question, if a candidate drops out of a race and nobody cares, was he ever really a candidate at all? What do you think about Lincoln Chafee dropping out of the presidential race? You think nothing. Go to newsmaxtv.com/comments and let us know. Coming up next, we're going to read some of your viewer comments. Say goodbye to Lincoln Chafee.
If you're going to run for the presidency of the United States, you should take the time to explore the challenges that are faced. Talk to people that have proven experience in the field. Listen. Have the humility to listen before you have an opinion. And then recognize the power of the presidency as it relates to crafting foreign policy and do it in a way that is true to our values. And I believe I have those skills.
Well, welcome back to the Daily Wrap. To catch more of J.D. Hayworth's interview with the former Florida Governor Jeb Bush, tune into Newsmax Prime at 8 p.m. all next week. I want to go back to the last segment because Steve had something he wanted to say about Lincoln Chafee.
Right.
I'm not denying any man his say on Lincoln Chafee.
First of all, in 15 minutes, so we'll have Mike Huckabee and Rick Santorum on the Steve Malzberg show. 15 minutes. But also, I said at the debate, all Lincoln Chafee needed was the alfalfa hair. So his announcement today that he was leaving the race, he left out the fact that he had a consultation with Spanky, Stymie, and Buckwheat, and that Mrs. Crabtree said, use your own judgment. But I guess, you know, he got out of the race.
Can we have a moment of silence for Lincoln Chafee? Okay, we had our moment. All right, now let's have some fun. Let's read your viewer comments. First up, we have a comment about Lincoln Chafee dropping out of the race, or about Steve's alfalfa comparison. Jason says, I hear Chafee supporters plan to mourn the loss on the golf links today if the weather holds. That, of course, is if they can find a fourth. Very funny. Very good.
Jason.
And here's a comment on the Muslim refugees. John says, in defending his apology for the violence done by Muslims, Rick Unger said, according to my Bible, you should stone people who commit adultery. I would ask Mr. Unger, when was the last time Christians stoned anybody for adultery? When was the last time a Muslim murdered an innocent Christian or Jew just because they were a Christian Jew? Quick answer is, number one, I'm not a Christian. I'm a Jew, so I don't know why you asked what about a Christian. And number two, I didn't apologize for anybody. Don't be ridiculous. All I said was that just because there are some very evil Muslims in the world doesn't mean every refugee, every little child who was bombed out of their house doesn't need to have somewhere to go. Here's one on Hillary Clinton. Carol says, I believe Hillary is a liar. And how does she relate to anyone, let alone the middle class? When was the last time she made a meal, shopped for her family, drove a car? Guys, that's an interesting question. And doesn't that speak to virtually all of the candidates who run for office?
Say that.
Go ahead, Heather, say it.
Yeah, I mean, I think that that's the thing. It's not so much, she is right, that she can't relate, but can Donald Trump, when's the last time that he drove his own car? I think that what it's going to come down to is who speaks to them as far as who's going to solve their problems, who's going to allow me to be able to shop for my groceries.
The truth is, if we're being honest, probably the only person who has been driving his own car and probably has gone to the supermarket is Ben Carson.
I think there's a lot more than Ben Carson. I think Rick Santorum, I would imagine Mike Huckabee. I think a lot of them. I mean, I think everyone on the Democrat side, whoever's left except for Hillary, but I don't think driving your car or going to the supermarket really qualifies. I think being able to relate to the average person, Donald Trump employs tens of thousands of average people and goes to his sites, goes to where the workers are. I think, you know, when's the last time Hillary ever employed anybody or ran a business or anything? I think Trump is more relatable than Hillary.
Well, I don't think Hillary's run a business, but she certainly employs people.
In the State Department? In government?
Well, no, even as in private.
In the Clinton Foundation. You mean like she employed Sidney Blumenthal while he was advising her on Libya?
Why do we care so much about Sidney Blumenthal?
Why? Because he was one of her chief email. So what? She, as Secretary of State, received more emails from him advising her on Libya than anybody else, and she admitted. She said she didn't know where Blumenthal was getting his advice from, and she would cross out his name and pass it on to people.
Well, we know why that was, though.
Well, because But that's
the
why
Obama administration had
doesn't
forbidden her
Right.
from hiring.
So
her.
that's why we care about Blumenthal.
I think it was too much of a big deal
No,
yesterday,
not at all.
honestly.
Not at all.
And actually, they never drove home the point of why it was a big deal to
I think they made the same point I just
Congressman
made.
Gowdy. I don't know. All right. Regarding the Benghazi committee, speak of the devil, Doug says, why was Clinton not asked the question of why Ambassador Stevens was in Libya when he was killed? She would, of course, taken the fifth, since the Dems do not want the American people to know that this was about gun running to Al-Qaeda. Now, obviously, you got some of your answer in an earlier segment. I don't know if it's fair to say it was to Al-Qaeda. It was to dissidents in Syria.
Says, I mean, look, I don't doubt that, but says who? What do you mean it was? Hillary was asked about it yesterday, specifically near the end, and she was told, I don't know if you could address this in open session. You could. She said, no, gun running to Syria, gun running to Libya, gun running to anybody. No, no, no. So maybe she, if you say it's definite, then she perjured herself. Or no one told the Secretary of State.
Yeah, it is weird that she did that. I have to go back and look at that segment, because I don't believe she didn't know either.
Well,
and I absolutely
then let's indict her.
That's what was going on.
Don't get indicted for perjury.
Anybody else have anything to say before we finish the segment about trashing Hillary?
You can find Lincoln Chafee every morning on Fox and Friends. I think it's Steve Doocy.
I doubt it. Steve Doocy. All right. If you want to weigh in on any of the issues we talk about here on the show, be sure to send us your comments at newsmaxtv.com/comments. You should have that memorized by now. As you can see, we'll even read them on the air. Coming up next, time for Yay or Nay. This is the Daily Wrap. And welcome back to the Wrap. It's that time again, for Yay or Nay. First up, while participating on a CNN panel discussing yesterday's Benghazi hearing, CNN legal analyst Jeffrey Toobin offered up a rather controversial argument. Toobin suggested that what happened in Benghazi 4 years ago might possibly have been Ambassador Stevens' fault. Take a listen.
There's another point that nobody wants to raise exactly because it's considered perhaps in bad taste, but Ambassador Stevens himself, did he make an intelligent decision in exposing himself and all these security guards to the obvious risks? Did he make a mistake in going into this extremely dangerous situation? Obviously, no one wants to blame this man. He was obviously a very accomplished diplomat. He wanted to be out among the people, but did he engage in unduly risky behavior?
I'm kind of caught not knowing what to say. It may be in bad taste to say it, so I'll do it.
No, look, obviously it's reprehensible. If he had a moral compass, he'd be ashamed of himself, but he has none, so he's not. But this reminds me of what Eleanor Clift told me, that he wasn't murdered because Stevens died of smoke inhalation. He died of smoke inhalation. It wasn't murder. Same vein.
Yeah, okay, that's...
I just think that there's no reason to try to pass blame on a hero in this situation whatsoever.
I agree, Jonathan. I suspect
you're gonna be surprised. I'm not saying I agree with what Jeffrey Toobin said, but I do think that as hot of an area as that was, that Ambassador Stevens should not have been there. That compound was terrible. He knew it was bad. He kept asking for extra security. It didn't come. At what point does an ambassador make an intelligent decision to just get out of there?
But what if he thought it was something that was part of his job, that he had to be there?
Well, that's something that he should, that I think in retrospect they may have needed to consider before, pull back, fix the security, and then come back. So I'm not blaming him, but I'm saying that these are things that,
what's particularly interesting, he wasn't supposed to be there that day.
Yeah.
So, all right, these are tough times for the Bush campaign, and they are now planning to reduce salaries, cut travel costs, and downsize their staff in order to focus all of their resources on New Hampshire. Apparently, the Bush campaign has burned through 86% of their campaign funds, meaning they've spent $11.5 million of their $13.4 million campaign budget. All of these cuts begin to sound awfully familiar. So the question is this a sign that Jeb Bush is about to go the way of Rick Perry, and that this is the beginning of the end for Jeb Bush, Steve?
Nay, he has a lot more money and resources and contributors than Rick Perry, and he's not getting out till the bitter end.
Right.
I think it's a smart move. I think that he's trying to control costs. I think that he did underestimate how long and how tough Trump would be in this, so he's trying to save funds. I hope he stays in it.
Jonathan.
I think he's going to stay in. I think you're right until he runs out of money, which is never going to be never. I mean, he just will get out when the votes start or the polls start dropping too
well,
low.
you know what's kind of interesting? It gets a little bit confusing because while we know his super PAC has tons of money, that money can't be spent on maintaining his campaign organization.
He has no control over it.
So he doesn't have that kind of money in his campaign. So you do begin to wonder, people thinking that Trump is going to get this nomination, Bush keeps falling down, they may stop giving him the money to run that operation.
Especially after the first couple of primaries or caucuses. If he doesn't do well, he's done.
I think that's right. And finally tonight, we take a look at the President and the First Lady singing Happy Birthday to Usher.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Okay.
This is.
Yeah. Oh, look at that. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you.
Are you getting this?
Happy birthday, dear Usher. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday. There you go. And that's a good cupcake, too.
All right, guys, I don't want to say the president's cheap, but when Usher came to my house for his birthday, I gave him a whole damn cake.
I don't know enough about Usher, but if he has any obscene lyrics or anti-police lyrics, then he should be ashamed of himself.
He doesn't.
Okay.
Obscene. He's got some obscene.
Does he have Usher?
He's got some. I mean, not obscene, but
he's
got
not a
some,
rapper.
No, and definitely not anti-police. But
Okay.